Hi, I'm Bob Cusack, and we are back with pollster Mark Penn, and this is our last discussion before the anticipated election, as we always do. But this one's very important. What's the one word that you would say captures your most recent polling data, Mark?
Well, I'm going to say transcript.
Transcript. Okay, explain.
Well, I think that CBS's refusal to hand over the transcript of their interview with Harris is like one of the few events remaining here that could make a difference. By 85 to 15, voters say the CBS should release the transcript. 56% have suspicions that it was not properly edited. And Harris has been making kind of good progress with her overall image. And if that transcript is not something that is not being released because it shows a lot of editing was done, it could make an impact. And I'm surprised that CBS is hanging on to it, as any news organization would face with these kinds of controversies. You're one yourself would probably just say, "Oh, here's the transcript of the interview. Read it yourself."
Yep. And 85%, you don't get a lot of 85% in your poll, especially in these polarizing times. So let's get to the horse race. First and foremost, you have Harris up by a point, but can see really either side winning. And as you mentioned, there are reasons for Harris to be pleased as well as Trump. And I mean, have you seen a close race like this so close to the election recently?
Well, this is a really perplexing race in so many different ways, because people are dissatisfied with the direction of the country, the direction of the economy, with their personal economics, and that usually means a pretty simple vote the ins out. And Harris has been depicted as not an in, but as someone new, and I think her campaign, while their growth has been stunted and they hit a wall, I think their campaign messaging seems to really be getting through in a way that I have trouble seeing Trump getting through with any messaging in the last couple of weeks.
Well, and it's interesting along those lines, because we talked before about how Harris was not doing media interviews, at least mainstream media interviews, or very few of them. And now she's doing a fair amount. Was just announced she's going to do a Fox News interview with Bret Baier. That's going to be a tough but fair interview. And Trump's not been doing that recently anyway. What do you make of that? What do you make of her media blitz? You have some polling on that. Doesn't really show she's closed the deal, but didn't have any major gaffes either.
I think the Harris campaign is very, very responsive to weaknesses. So that if on one week there's a story, Harris losing black voters, then the next week they're going to send former President Obama out to tell black voters, come vote for Harris. I think whatever weakness you see, one week you'll see a weakness, she's not doing interviews. Next week they'll do interviews. They are being very, very responsive to trying to plug holes as they appear into the dike of their campaign, and that's that to me is I think it's visible. I think voters see them responding, and even if the right always sees that as aha, she must be weak at that. It's okay, she is weak at that, but what she's doing is moving to correct it.
Right.
Well, I just don't see the same thing on the Trump campaign. Right. He still says stupid stuff that can be taken out of context. He still basically talks, about immigration above any issue. I don't see them addressing weaknesses. I don't see any movement at all in what they're doing. It's as though she's running a campaign and he's not even running a campaign. Now, there's some exceptions to that. I'll take the exceptions. I think in some of the key swing states, I think in what he's doing in Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, he has zeroed in. He's found local issues. He is there personally. He's holding big rallies. So I think he is making a difference in those targeted swing states. I think it's a national message matter, not really doing much.
You mentioned the black male vote. Where do you see that now? You mentioned Obama's trying to shore up support. We obviously, women are supporting Harris in this election by and large, and men are supporting Trump. But what do you make of the black vote? And obviously, the more Trump cuts into that lead, the better for him. He doesn't need to win it, but there is obviously some major concern there.
Look, are blacks going to vote for the first black woman president? Yes, they are. And are they showing strong support for her in our polls? Yes, they are. And I think this effort on the black vote for Trump will not really yield too much. I think the real prize is the Latino vote. Latino vote is now equal to or bigger than the black vote. It does not have a history of voting for only one party. There are no Latinos on the tickets, and a majority of Latinos see the economy as personally difficult on them. So the potential for massive switching in the Latino vote, again, is enormous compared to getting 2% of the black vote. Remember, Latinos are now, when I was started in 92 in presidential work, they were, 96, they were 2% of the electorate. Now they're 13.
Yep.
So that's where the real votes are. And that was why I was surprised Rubio wasn't put on the ticket. I was surprised also that Shapiro wasn't put on the Democratic ticket, but it was what it was.
Your polling, speaking of the Veeps, has Vance winning the debate, which most pundits agreed with over Walz. Interesting. Saturday Night Live is kind of poking fun at Tim Walz, and Saturday Night Live is poking fun at you. You're famous, but there could be some issues there. Do you think that has shifted the race at all? I mean, Trump, Harris poll show won the first debate against Trump, but now Vance kind of picked up Trump a little bit. Or do you think, hey, that's not going to matter in the long run anyway?
Well, I think what Vance did was he had become, because I think the Democrats had some great Oppo research on him, cat ladies and such that they dumped out right away. He had a really negative image, and I think he's been able to redeem his image and become an asset out there, on the trail. Very effective in interviews, really an effective debater. And Harris was well liked as a choice. So net, these choices there are no Sarah Palins on the ticket now. There are two reasonable vice presidential choices, none of whom is going to make any big difference. And I think Vance rehabilitated himself in the debate and does a good job out there in the circuit.
What do you make of early voting? Obviously, early voting was very important in 2020. The pandemic is now over, but a lot of people still saying, roughly half, that they're going to early vote or have early voted. But you have data showing, hey, in the battleground states, the edge, which typically in this situation goes to Democrats, is down to single digits as far as who they voted for. What do you make of that?
Well, I might have said instead of transcript, U.S. mail.
Right.
So, because I really do think that this closing of the gap between the advantage that Democrats had in mail-in votes, if that's true, that's what we're seeing in the polling. We're seeing in the battleground states basically now equal distribution of the mail-in votes by party. That's a sea change. Those mail-in votes were coming in 2-1 Democratic, and if you just do the math on it, a vote that's in the bank is in the bank. If my votes are all due on election day, only about 80 or 90% of the people who plan to vote on election day make it there.
Right.
Their kid has to go to skins a knee, or somebody gets a cold,
right.
A work shift changes, and so that was happening in a differential way to Republicans. And it wasn't happening to Democrats because Democrat vote had already been counted. So they couldn't skin a knee.
Right.
So now if there's an equal number of people coming to the polls on election day, then it will neutralize that impact mathematically. And I think Democrats were picking up as much as 2 points through that. And this will be a huge evening out here for Republicans.
14%, according to your data, still undecided on this race. Arguably, they're going to make the difference. Obviously, turnout is going to be important. How do the candidates reach those 14%? Are those 14% possibly going to vote for third parties, or have you seen that kind of just, I don't know, it seems the third party thing has fizzled out over the cycle?
Yeah, no, I think in those I would expect about half won't vote at all and never make a choice. I think the other half here is going to be very closely divided. I don't see something here where a dam is going to break. Oh my goodness, we just can't bring the Biden-Harris people back, and that's the dam. Or oh my goodness, we just can't put Trump in, and that's the dam. I think all these things have sort of played themselves out. It's hand-to-hand combat for the last few votes. People are shifting now to their ground game. So I don't know that they're going to be the big factor. The bigger factor here is going to be, I think, is the Trump swing state strategy going to be successful, or is the Harris national message of joy and change going to win out?
Well, speaking of change, Harris has the advantage in your polling data by about a half dozen points on representing change, the change candidate, which is kind of startling, especially when they rejected Biden and Biden's numbers continue to be poor. And that's part of the reason he was pushed aside amid that, after that disastrous debate performance. But it's interesting. On her media blitz, she was asked how different she is than Biden. Didn't really offer an answer other than saying, "Well, clearly I'm not Joe Biden," but didn't. And there are wonky policy differences they do have, but didn't differentiate herself from Biden. Some people thought that was a mistake. But why do you think she's winning the change debate, at least right now?
Well, we were two former presidents, and now we're one former president versus someone who isn't a former president. So I guess if you ask me, who is more change, then she would be almost by definition more change because she wasn't a president before. I don't know that is the salient element on which people are voting. Right? So are they voting here because they don't like Trump, don't think he should be returned to office, and so they're not looking at Harris that carefully and they vote for it? Or are they voting because they're unhappy with the Biden policies? Look, there's no change here in terms of how unhappy they are with the Biden policies. And we asked another question where we asked whether or not she would continue those policies, and people said yes.
Yes.
But I just think the failure on the Trump campaign to be able to turn, they're still "Make America Great Again." Okay, that was great, but that's 10-year-old slogan. Okay, for them to crystallize this moment and this choice, it's now verging on malpractice.
Yeah. I mean, and you look at these numbers, and these numbers are just for the incumbent party, the party in the White House. I mean, basically, 6 and 10, and this has been very consistent. We've talked about this for literally years. Mark, is 6 and 10 people think the economy's on the wrong, the nation's on the wrong track, the economy's on the wrong track, and yet here we have a race that is basically tied. Is that, and inflation's the top issue? Obviously, that's a problem for Democrats, but they can still win this thing. Is it because, do you think maybe Trump should be talking more about the economy and less about immigration?
Well, I always thought that he should be talking more about the economy, that he had great potential with the Latino vote on the economy. But he doesn't. He's not making a coherent economic message with a theme. Look, you may think that Harris thinks a bunch of fluff, but she says, "Hey, I'm for an opportunity economy. I'm going to give people, $25,000 for housing. I'm going to help people out to start a small business." Now, those policies may be nonsense, and she's for an opportunity. So, but she has a theme. She has some policies. You can remember what they are. She's delivering messages.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I don't know. And then she's, I think, successfully classified the Trump tariff stuff as a national sales tax because Trump isn't even winning really the issue of, is he going to lower taxes when he's out there to lower taxes. So I do think that you've seen that that Harris is having more messaging success with simple messages Maybe they're not the most profound. Maybe they don't even make sense, but they repeat. She is a message machine in terms of repeating her message, if nothing else.
Yes.
Republicans like to criticize her for that, but they could use a candidate who is a little better at it. But more importantly, there's no message for this time coming from Trump,
Yep.
Other than Biden did a bad job. And they'll say, okay, Biden did a bad job. And
Right.
they'll agree with that. But so what? Doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Now, as far as obviously we've been talking about the White House a lot, but the House and Senate also up for grabs. Your data has Dems up 2 in the congressional horse race. What do you make of the battle for the House and the Senate now that Harris is at the top of the ticket for Democrats?
Well, I think that this is, again, coming out within any confidence interval, no question about it. And I think we could be counting the House votes for a few days.
Yeah.
There are going to be some tricky congressional districts in New York and California, which I think are going to wind up to be important again. I don't know that you're going to get a national trend. I don't know that you're going to get a national trend out of this election, because everything has fought right down to the dead even, and so even if somebody wins, they're going to be back to a very small margin of victory. And I think we do think that that Montana is going to give the Senate to the Republicans, and we don't think there's going to be an upset in Texas.
You know that presidents, Mark, have tried to unify the country a lot. Basically, every president who's run has vowed to do that. Certainly in recent memory, that has not succeeded. Barack Obama had big majorities, and as Mitch McConnell has said, he didn't need to call Mitch McConnell very often and did not. Do you think, Harris has started to talk about like unifying themes, more positive talk, because the electorate is sour. But that's tricky too. Some people also say that Trump is very negative, and not only about the Biden administration, but about the country. Negativity, I mean, it works in politics, but is there a limit to it? And should the candidates try to be more uplifting, morning in America, hope and change kind of thing?
Look, the ships have sailed in terms of the campaigns.
Uh-huh.
Right now, you're down to turnout, you're down to ground game. You're I think that that's different, however, in terms of governing. As I always say, it always seems to people that getting elected is hard. Actually, governing is much harder. Less than about half the people that get elected wind up leaving government with a good rating. And so it's a lot harder to govern. And the problem is the country hasn't had candidates that have really been reaching out to the 65% of the electorate, really been, going away from their bases. Obviously, Ronald Reagan united the country in a big way. Nixon, surprisingly, united the country in a big way until he didn't. If you look at President Clinton's ratings as he left were very similar to Reagan's in the high 70s. And now we have a series of presidents who talk about bringing the country together, but then as soon as they get an electoral advantage, basically go partisan and then leave office very close to 50-50. And I think that's unfortunate. And hopefully, Trump will only have 4 years. Harris could have 8. And whether or not she goes back to her California progressive roots and says, "Oh, never mind," on a lot of the stuff she said in campaign, or really moves to the center if she wins, that to me is one of the big mysteries of what's going to come out here. And I think, remember, Trump, if he wins, he's not going to have to face an election again. Right. So he could go back for the center, go back for national unity, solve some wars, really create a legacy, as a lasting legacy, as an eventful president. I don't think people realize that's going to be his opportunity. He's going to be more or less freed from electoral politics.
You mentioned the ground game, and it's important. Obviously, Harris has been a fundraising machine, raising $1 billion since becoming the nominee. It seems like she has the edge in that area, but at the same time, with resources and ground game, Hillary Clinton had that advantage in 2016. What do you make of this? And some people say, listen, if you watch too many ads, there can be a negative effect that you're tired of the ads, especially in these battleground states.
I don't know. You can never watch too many ads. As an ad maker, look, I think that it's ground game may be misleading in the sense that there's the registration game, there's the mail-in vote game, and then there's the GOTV game. It does appear that the Republicans are doing a much better job at that.
Yeah.
They had been outfoxed the last couple of campaigns. They got killed on the mail-in vote. They got, they usually have a strength on election day, but that really wasn't enough to reflect what was in the polls. And so I think the Republicans are doing better than expected on that so far.
Definitely. This is it until the election. Any closing thoughts? These numbers have interesting. Well, obviously, we had a big event with Harris replacing Biden, but Biden and Trump's numbers have been pretty consistent throughout this cycle. What are you looking for? Closing remarks before we head into November 5th.
Well, look, you're really seeing a divided country. One half of the country kind of likes the policy directions that many of these policy directions, and they want a change from Trump. And there's another half of the country that kind of remembers Trump as a good president, gave him a 51% job rating. Think that he was better for the economy. He definitely is seen as having some definite edges in terms of dealing with the world crisis situations in the Ukraine and Israel. I think there are credible reasons why either candidate could win at this point. This is so close. But then it's going to come down to whichever one wins, can they set a direction forward for the country that tries to bring, really move it in a lasting direction. I don't know. As I always say, as I said to you a few minutes ago, governing is actually a lot harder than getting elected.
Yep.
Ask President Biden as well, or ask whoever comes out of this. I think from a polling perspective, we have tried to document the various forces, the issues, the personality changes that underlie this. We can only take snapshots in time. We can't really see what's moving. I think that campaign to campaign, she's running a better campaign than he is. On the other hand, he has run a very strong campaign in those swing states. And that's what I think brings this race to be very competitive, where you could well see, if our poll is right, that she will narrowly win the popular vote by 2%, and he might narrowly win these swing states based on how these campaigns are coming in.
I think it's a good bet that we'll be using the word narrow and slim a lot around election night and probably election week. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm sure we'll do some post-game analysis post November 5th.
Excellent. And we better be using those words or we're in big trouble.
Yes. Thanks so much, Mark.